everyone, I'm Christine Manick. I am the Assistant Development Director at NOFA Mass. Welcome to this afternoon's workshop, Reaching Beyond the Choir, Magnifying Our Voices on Climate and Soil Health. We have Francis Bigda-Peyton, Charles Moore. We have Francis here with us in person. And then joining by Zoom, we have Charles Moore, Miriam Stason, and Lisa, I'm sorry, I didn't practice your last name, Brucilacchio. Francis is an education team coordinator, participant in Mothers Out Front, Healthy Soils, and Livable Climate Action Group. Charles Moore is from Sustainable Middlesex. Miriam Stason is Agriculture Operations Manager at the Trustees of Reservations. And Lisa Brucilacchio is on the board at Somerville Community Growing Center. Before we jump in, I have a few details to review with you. Racial equity is incredibly important to NOFA Mass. We have our racial equities slides here showing our commitment to racial equity and justice and our examination of whiteness and dismantling systems of white supremacy that are part of many dominant systems, including our agriculture and food systems. We want to honor the indigenous peoples who stewarded the land before our arriving. Please take some time and visit native-land.ca and identify the original steward of where you live. For those of us joining us by Zoom, please respect our Zoom norms and keep yourself on mute throughout the workshop, unless you are invited to come off mute. We want to call on everyone, especially white allies and co-conspirators, to action on a few items to assist BIPOC-led organizations. These actions are listed on the slide, and there are 2 events taking place today for Spanish speakers and for BIPOC members. Lastly, we have our partner level sponsors. We have a number of sponsors who help to make our conference possible, and I encourage you to purchase from all of them when you do, let them know that you appreciate your support of NOFA Mass. We also have our supporter level sponsors. And we have some incredible items to bid on in our online auction. Visit go.rallyop.com/NOFA winter auction to visit the lineup and bid. We have some awesome items. I can't wait to go and do that. And we will have a survey at the end of the workshop. For those of us who are here at Worcester State, there's a QR code at the outside of the classroom. You can scan it on your way out, and that'll bring you right to the workshop. And for those of you joining on Zoom, I believe that you can find that on your handbook from Cuba. And now I will hand it off to Francis. And let's see.
How do I see the people on Zoom?
Yeah, we're gonna try to. All right, so you have everyone in gallery there. There. Is that
Great.
work for you?
Well, thank everybody for coming. And while we were waiting for folks to assemble, we were having a discussion about the lack of snow. So maybe you kind of noticed that it's been warm lately and there's not any snow out there. Maybe it's time to worry even more about climate change. We certainly care about climate change in this group and at this conference, and in particular, the solutions to climate change and healthy soils, organic, sustainable practices can be part of that solution. And we want to promote those because healthy soils draw down carbon, help with water retention, water cycle, increase biodiversity, and produce healthy food, among many other things. It is part of the solution for climate change, and people don't always understand the connection between healthy soils and climate change. We were talking throughout the day about how do you inspire people? How do you get them more involved in the movement that they want to get involved at a personal level, at a community level? One way that we've talked about is helping them understand better what the issues are and bringing public opinion closer to what experts think about a subject. That's one way you can do it, but we all know knowledge only goes so far with motivating people, and we need more. We need to inspire them. We need to help people realize things are relevant to their lives. We need to plug into values that they might have. And this morning, one of the speakers was talking about a third element that I hadn't really thought of before, which is we have to get people curious. And maybe if they're excited and curious, they'll want to learn more and maybe even change their behaviors and work at a different level, have more involvement in this Healthy Soils agenda.
Francis, can I just speak up a little bit? And
Can you hear me?
I don't know if the mic
Is the mic on?
well, we don't have a mic for you in the classroom.
Oh, you're able to hear me?
So just it might be.
Okay.
A little bit.
Just projecting is helpful,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
especially with the heater going.
It's very loud. What, did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But your volume now is bigger than it was before.
Okay, I'm trying to look at the camera and look at you. There's a kind of, I haven't figured out all of this. It's a good thing I don't have chewing gum. I probably couldn't do that at the same time either. But how do you inspire people that they want to do more than just sort of check it off the list, actually start changing actions and maybe even get more involved? And we were talking about some of the elements of that, knowledge is one of the elements. Certainly plugging into people's values, helping them figure out how it's relevant to their lives. Maybe this is important to me, or important to my community. And the last one that I just was thinking about this morning is how do you excite them? How to get people curious that they want to learn more? And so that's our challenge, and that's what we're going to be trying to work on today as a group, but also asking our speakers, our little panelists, to talk about what they've learned and what challenges they've had, so we can all learn together about how to get people more involved with this issue, knowledgeable about this issue. And what the research I've looked at about this, people really don't know there's much of a connection between healthy soils and the climate. They don't know what sustainable agriculture means. They're not really thinking about equity issues that has anything to do with agriculture. And the last one I've seen a lot of, they don't really feel that there's any hope in this issue, that big ag has already controlled it, that we'll just have a niche with organic agriculture, but this will never be broad scale enough that we can go that way. So people don't know that there's methodologies out there that we know how to do, that this is attainable. So how do we give people hope and excitement? And that's what we're here for, is figure out how to spread this message to populations that haven't really thought about this before, though everybody does eat. So at some level, we're all related to food, and maybe get people more curious about where it comes from. So the format for today is going to be 3 panelists talking for 25 minutes, breakout groups, which I think we're going to handle because we have a wonderful assistant here who's going to help us have breakout groups virtually and in person. And then we'll come back together to share learnings. We have one final question, which we'd like you to be thinking about, and you'll have a chance in your breakout group to answer it with one another. And here's the question. The comedian Lily Tomlin once said, "I always wondered why somebody didn't do something about that. Then I realized I was the somebody." Think of a time when you were thinking of an issue that mattered to you and it moved you to the point that you were going to be the somebody. Or think about a time when you were instrumental in moving other people to action, making them realize that they had a part to play. So be thinking about that, because we all had those kind of moments, and we can maybe learn from those. So our panelists have already been introduced. We're very lucky to have these 3 people who actually have quite a bit of knowledge on this subject. What we decided to do, rather than have people speak individually, is for me to throw out the question, and maybe one of you can maybe raise your hand. I do see you now. Raise your hand if you'd like to. I don't know if I can see those little yellow hands, so, but I can't see regular hands at this point. If one of the panelists wants to respond to a question, but there'll be 3 questions, and hopefully everybody will have some time to respond to the questions in the 25 minutes. And I have someone here who's going to tell me when 25 minutes is up, because it is now 2:40. All right. Let's see, our panelists again, Lisa, Miriam, and Charlie. First question. Ready? What's worked for you in expanding the conversation? We should be focusing on the speaker, not me. So what's worked for you in expanding the conversation? And how did you get people excited about an issue that they became stronger advocates? How'd you get to touch their hearts? Any takers?
I'm happy to talk about it.
Okay, go ahead. And I think Miriam was second.
Okay. We've spent a lot of time with this. One group I'm involved with is called the Lexington Climate Action Network. And it's a group that's focused on educating and encouraging advocacy for climate change issues. And there are a variety of things that we've done. The first thing was just setting up a group and letting people know the group was there. There were a lot of people like me who were concerned about climate change, but I didn't know there was a group you could go to. So I think that's the first setup. The thing that we've done that I think has been helpful is we've had films on it. We've had lectures on it. And what works well from a lecture perspective is if someone has written a book recently, that's good. They like to sell their books. So they're happy to come and talk about that. We had a very successful event with Bill McKibben recently, if you're familiar with him. He wrote a book on the flag, the cross, and the station wagon, which is kind of interesting. And what we also did at the end of the lecture was have an informal reception. And that can motivate people and engage them. So lectures, films, and then an event that was very successful was an energy fair. So people could come and learn what they could get and apply. I think one of the things that motivates people is when they realize other people are motivated and concerned about this issue. So just bringing people together is something we see helpful. That's a quick summary.
Miriam, did you want to go next?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you everyone for joining. And just to give you a little context of where I'm coming from is I work at the Trustees of Reservation. So it's a statewide conservation organization that touches on many different things from protecting beaches, hiking trails, there's historic homes, museums. And so one piece of that is farmland. So my work is focused on the farmland, specifically on the land, on the farms that the trustees runs. So there's farmland all across the state that we lease out, mostly in Western Massachusetts, and then in Eastern Massachusetts, we run 5 farms. So on these farms, there's thousands of visitors every year walking through, people coming for pizza dinners, people coming for camp, community supported agriculture members, so lots of different types of visitors. So this how we are expanding it is we are in it right now. We're trying to actually figure this out. So I don't want to pretend like, oh, we've figured it out and this is how you do it. So I come to this with the same amount of curiosity and sort of like what are our steps. But I've been in my role for 2 years. We have a relatively kind of had a lot of transitions on the team, but have a really solid agriculture team right now of about 15 staff members. And how like our approach in the last couple of years is really starting to kind of bring it back in and try to figure out internally what is our language, because there's so many people who work in the organization outside of our department that are also engaged with the public. So really started to bring it in last year. We worked with American Farmland Trust and another organization called Regenerative Design Group to do a soil health assessment for the organization. So we spent many months. They were amazing to work with, and I learned a lot working with both of those groups and getting some baseline soil health information for 7 properties in the organization. So really starting with a baseline approach. This is to say, like, the farmers working on the ground have a lot of this information. That's always at the forefront of everyone's mind, but really trying to have data and be able to explain it in a broader way to the public has been really important. So the soil health assessment, and then from that also just starting to educate people across different teams. So share that language of if someone comes in to a retail store and wants to know, like, why are the chickens in the middle of the field, or why were the cows here and now they're somewhere else, they can answer that question. or if a camper comes to camp, they can understand, leave with a certain amount of information. So that's sort of where we're working on right now. So again, we haven't figured it out, but also realizing it takes time. So part of that sort of initial gathering information and getting it out, it has been just updating our website, having blogs, information, and that's really geared towards someone who's seeking that information and wants to read it rather than someone who just lands there. It takes time to read through stuff. So yeah, that's sort of a long answer to say we don't know, but we're figuring it out. And I think, you know, this kind of blurs into sort of the obstacles, but I think most of our farmers are not involved in direct education to the public. But there's one farmer who is, and I asked him the other day, I was like, what is your answer to this question? And he said, I start with the visit, like he works a lot with the kids that come to the farm. So younger kids, and they're interested in the cows. So being able to like start where the interest is. And then he said, I just work my way down into the soil and talk about the cows, talk about the pasture, the grass, talk about the roots, and then that's where you end up. So I think I feel like that's symbolic of where you start, where are people's entry points. The tricky part, it's different for everyone.
Thank you. Lisa, did you want to take a stab at the question?
Sure. These answers are reflective of our Mothers Out Front Healthy Soil Livable Futures Action Group. And so kind of like Miriam, I was talking with other folks to see like, how do we answer this question? Because we, in the Mothers Out Front work, we identify with the mother or the mothers or grandmothers or caregivers perspective, which is about caring for and taking care of the next generation. So we think that that's something that many people can identify around, but it's not enough. So we're a small action group within a larger organization, which has the climate focus, but even within that focus, we found that having our emphasis on natural solutions, soil health, food is not on everyone's radar, and it's not where everyone is focused. So what are ways that we can connect? Well, sometimes it's fun doing something like a pumpkin smash, which is about like composting your pumpkins after Halloween so that they don't get just thrown in the trash and bringing people together. But also this idea of what are different groups that you might connect with. So for instance, zero waste groups, kind of to Charlie's thing about, you know, like, is there a group? Is there a way to link in? So I know that some of our town chapters have been able to make nice connections between like, oh, maybe we should talk about composting more as part of our zero waste. And then I think the only other thing that hasn't been brought up by the other panelists is using art. I know I posted in the food systems being part of coming from a place of love, the image that is our logo, which is like a child and a mom sort of coming out of the roots and out of the trees, that we're connected, but there's something visceral about the artwork that helps people to kind of get it. So, and I know that that's been a way that other groups have somehow, in some of my other work, I've used public art to engage people in shifting perspectives and getting to think differently about something. I'll wrap up there.
Thank you. Well, we've anticipated, Miriam, the next question, which is obstacles. What have been your obstacles in spreading the message, spreading the word, getting people excited, involved, and knowledgeable? What have you found out to be the problems?
I can go. I also kind of wanted to mention for the previous one, is an important way is to get people out on the land. So kind of even just walking the farm, rather than just someone coming and going for a hike is a wonderful thing, but to have someone to kind of tour you through and understand why the landscape looks like it does and what are the choices that are made is really important. So I think kind of what I mentioned before is like our approach is to be kind of educating internally for like a fairly large organization. And the obstacle, I think, is just that, is sharing that information within an organization that has a lot of different priorities, and different focuses, and making sure that, you know, as a farmer, I do want everyone to leave summer camp having a certain set of information, but I don't have anything to do with leading the summer camps or organizing the summer camp. So I think just sort of gathering everyone and being able to share that information can be challenging. And I think another challenge is, like I mentioned before, is there are so many levels of maybe initial interest or information, knowledge coming into it. So there could be someone who comes to a farm for a pizza dinner, and we would love, you know, that you can see the cows in the background, and there might be some meat and vegetables on the pizza from the farm. So understanding how it's all connected and being able to have people leave with a certain amount of information wherever they're coming in. And I think it's at all different levels and levels of interest. So trying to like tap into those is a lot. So realizing it's not just one approach, but it's like a many, you need to come at it from many different angles. But I think that's exciting too.
It sounds like you have to be flexible. Who's next? Charlie, Lisa, anyone want to speak to obstacles you've encountered in spreading?
Clearly, the biggest obstacle, excuse me, that we have is people's time. And perhaps you've noticed that most of the people, most of the people that attend seem to be older, and it's hard to find people who have kids that have the time to come to a event such as this. So even though they're very concerned, to get time to really get out there and be active is, I think, our clearest challenge, not concern. So what do you do with that? Well, a couple strategies. One is you got to find a time that works for people. Our Sustainable Middlesex group meets at 9 o'clock on Saturday mornings. So you're there, you have the event, you get through stuff, and then you have the rest of the day. In fact, our larger meetings are also on a Saturday morning. So I think the timing of when you hold events is one way to address that.
Thank you. Lisa, do you want to add anything?
Reinforcing what Miriam was saying about the internal messaging, because that's certainly something that our Healthy Soil group has been challenged with. And it also just in the, we're always learning, that really recognizing what role can our Healthy Soil work have in raising up the larger message of Mothers Out Front, because sometimes we're connecting with people who don't know about the larger work around, you know, gene energy sources and whatnot. So that was an important learning, that it goes both ways. And also just reinforcing the experiential learning, and that even within our own group where people were very interested but didn't have necessarily much personal experience, let's say with farms, for instance, that we set up and arranged and had a site visit with the Urban Farming Institute in Boston and with Gaining Ground out in Concord to learn about different ways that groups are coming together and potentially who might be some allies and where we might be able to bring our work in that sort of allyship thing. So I think there's just trying to recognize also the challenge of getting people to think beyond just what they can do at home to what they can do at a community and or the state level. So how do you move from getting individuals to take action, which we know has its own challenges, to thinking about larger community scale to really move some of these issues forward with more momentum.
That's the big issue, huh? I just wanted to speak to something Charlie said. Sometimes you have to bring, and this alludes to what you were saying too, Lisa, sometimes you have to bring experiences to people. At the Bedford Compost Festival, one of our presenters brought some dirt and worms and compost and even bones to throw in, and the kids were fascinated and everybody wanted to bring a worm home. So you can bring it to them too. It's not so easy. And Charlie, I'll bring some worms over your house. Last question. How do you address equity issues? How are you addressing that in your work? And how do you find points of interest, shared interest, and motivation so you can connect with these other groups? Equity issues?
Go ahead, Lisa.
Go ahead, Lisa.
So I was just going to say that recognizing that we're in a learning curve and that Mothers Up Front, both national and state, are really grappling with this issue as well. So we recognize that a large part of it is to educate ourselves and to learn how to listen better, and to actually make connections with groups that are doing the work in the places and spaces and communities, and learn how to best support priorities that come from that work, and then figure out how to help leverage and magnify that in terms of policies and legislation. So lots of learning.
Yeah. Just to support what Lisa was saying, I think the way we are approaching it is largely has to be on a policy basis in your town or whatnot. And in climate change, one of the areas is making sure that the support for efficient systems is linked into our affordable housing. And I think you can only do that through advocating with the town and town organizations. I think an individual is hard. Francis, could I just make one comment on one of your other questions?
Sure,
which
go ahead.
was how you address or how you touch people's heart. And what has been remarkably effective that we've seen is when you have kids present, when you have high school students or others, or the Sunrise Group. There's also the Massachusetts Youth Climate. When you have kids out there advocating, it really, I think, influences people more than a college professor.
Miriam, do you want to tackle this equity issue?
Yeah, I can comment on kind of a couple ways we're thinking of it right now. Is one, kind of closer to the work that our team is doing on the ground on the farms, is making our farm products more accessible. You know, it takes a lot that, you know, focusing on regenerative practices, even sustainable practices. Our products are expensive. It's expensive to buy meat and vegetables. So we have a program we call our mobile market program, where we have about a 350 member community supported agriculture program, where people can use their healthy incentive program, HIP benefits for that. And we partner with a number of organizations in Boston to identify customers and distribute that produce. And in terms of our farms, we have 4 farm stores throughout the state. So just recently got approved to accept SNAP benefits at all of the stores. And so that will be able to extend that to our meat community supported agriculture program and also vegetables. So we're just starting that. We're not quite there yet, but hopefully by the beginning of the season, we'll have everything in place for that. So that's just our products. And then just thinking bigger, like I mentioned, there's farmland all across the state. A lot of that is in hay, but there's other parcels of land that are used for other things. That part of the organization is not centralized. So there's different people throughout the organization managing those leases. So we're really trying to envision what could it look like if we were to centralize that, and be figuring out who's on these pieces of land and create more land access and be able to really evaluate that process. So I'm not claiming that is something we're doing right now, but it's just something we're thinking about and would be really exciting for the future.
Thank you. One thing, Charlie, that you didn't talk about, which I thought was one of the most impressive parts of Sustainable Middlesex, is some of the large events you have where you bring in many communities, Middlesex County, and you have representatives there so people can have give and take with the representatives. Those have been, seem to me very powerful at engaging different peoples on
Yeah, I
issues.
mean, that's really true. Bringing activists together from neighboring towns is a really strong motivating experience. It's great to have a national or statewide conference, but if you could just bring 10 surrounding communities together, you'll find there's a wonderful exchange of information. And when people get together with other people who are concerned and doing things, it's a real motivating event. So that's really true. And when we do that, and gosh, I think we had all 500 people register for an earlier one. We always make sure that our legislators know this event is going on, and we've had as many as 10, 11 show up. So it's a lobbying, it's an energizing, and it's a learning kind of experience.
We have a few minutes left. I'll go for it, Lisa, your question. Any ideas about how to help move from individual action that people can take to a more community or even a legislative focus of their work? Since we've solved all our previous questions, I wonder if you had any thoughts about that one. Now they're all going to be speechless. Lisa, you asked the question. Any thoughts?
Well, I think kind of along the lines of what Charlie's saying is, I came from New York State, so moving to Massachusetts, I've been here for many decades, but learning that this is like home rule, that every town has boards and commissions, and a lot of decisions are made at that level. So I do think that just educating ourselves and others about how you can get involved and how you can influence like affordable housing spending is something that can be scary, terrifying, and pretty empowering when you realize that people will listen to you. You don't need a very big group to have an impact. I
That's
learned
really
that kind
true.
of early on in my activist days, like, wait, they're looking to me. We've only got 100 people on our mailing list, but that was seen as powerful. So don't underestimate the impact at the local level. And then when you start getting together with your other towns regionally, even though that's not how Massachusetts is organized, there's power there too. Because geographic boundaries, geopolitical boundaries are not how the natural world is set up. So recognizing that we got to move past them is something that individuals can do easier than some of the elected officials. So it's up to us to be that person to bridge over that space sometimes.
Miriam or Charlie, any last thoughts about that?
I just think it's really true there. And one of the things, an example, we put together a job description for a sustainability manager in Lexington. And when Bedford, the neighboring town, heard about it, and wanted to do it, we could just give them our job description and that kind of stuff. And then they take it to their town meeting and move it. I also really want to emphasize what you said. It's amazing what a small group of people can do. Maybe in our Lexington Climate Action Group, maybe there are 15, 20 people who go regularly, but we put together various articles for our town to respond to, and they've gone through all of them. So a small group can really make significant change.
Miriam, any thoughts?
No, but I'm feeling inspired to be part of a small group in my town. So thanks.
I think small groups and individuals too. I remember reading this little sticker once that said, if you think you can't make a difference, consider the mosquito. You know what that's like with trying to fall asleep at night and there's one in the bedroom. There you go. Okay, we're going to now try a technological advance, which is to have breakout groups here and virtually. Can you help me, Christine? How many people are there virtually now?
We have 7 people who are not like involved with the workshop. So
we'll have 2 virtual groups?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have 2 virtual groups, and it looks like we're gonna have 2 groups here. What? You want to have one bigger one here? Okay, they want to have one bigger room. They're all ready to be together. Okay, so we're gonna have 2 groups virtually and 1 group here. And your leaders have questions, but I'm going to remind them of what the questions are, and you too. The first question is the Lily Tomlin one. You have, I know you do. But it was the time that you knew it had to be you. Or the second one has to do with why you're here. And the third one, where would you like the healthy soils message to move next? Where do you want to go? Where do you think we need to go to expand the people that we tell the connection between healthy soils, climate change? Where do you think we should go next? So there's time for that in your group, and we're time to give people some ideas of what you think really has helped you spread the message. All right, good luck in your groups.
Francis, can you reinforce how long?
Oh, very good. We have 30 minutes and it is now 3:06. So I will time that. 3:06. Great. All right, we're going to come back now. We have about 10 minutes, and we have an assignment for those people who are coming in virtually. If you would, you can write in chat. We will save the chat. If you're walking away with one idea from today, some new idea, some new perspective of something that you might do differently, please post it in the chat. And we want to talk now. Our group asked more questions than answered, and we did not get through all the questions, but we could keep on going, I think. I wondered if people had both from this live group that you can probably hear, I hope, and we can hear from you about something that stood out for them, some new perspective that they got out of this. We have about 10 minutes for group sharing. Anybody have anything? You have to unchat, you have to unmute to talk if you're coming in virtually.
I would bring up just this whole question.
Can you hear her?
Are you able to hear me?
I
No.
have to repeat.
Oh, why don't you come over here and this is the microphone? Come on up. They can even see you. That's the camera right there.
Is this also mic? Is that the mic? Is that mic?
They can see if you stand here.
Hi, and so we were having a conversation and just thinking about the cell and somebody coming out of marketing. I'm very far away from marketing, but I'm now kind of more in that, is that this idea of how to even begin to get soil health as an idea. You're talking about the long lead up and how to, the climate is abstract. We know this, the climate change and carbon drawdown, those are all like way down the road. And what are the ways, the solution that we came up with is that it has to come back to food, or growing food on your lawn, or some way to bring children into appreciating what it means to grow organically without pesticides that are killing the insects. You know, to speak in those terms that make sense to mothers or families, and everybody makes choices around food.
Any other takeaways so far? Things that stood out for you?
We talked a lot about the need for connection across small groups and actions and how many initiatives everybody has. So perhaps it's ways of sort of making sure we know one another, but perhaps the way to do that. I mean, how do we do that? Do we do that through identifying single initiatives that we all are taking a different angle on the same single initiative? I mean, it's pretty complex to think about, but really a priority for our group discussion was, how are we connecting all these small groups and initiatives? They're making big changes, but they're making big changes in disparate ways, and we want to build the momentum between the groups.
Lenore, you're raising your hand?
Yeah. Hi. So I was in Susan's group, and I was like, you know, banging that hammer about networking and collaborating and amplifying each other's voices. So I would really like in the chat for people to put down their websites if they're if they're in an organization that's doing eco-activism work, and so we can have each other's websites, and I'm going to put down our website and and email of our group. Our group is the Regenerative Farming, Forests and Food Systems Group of Climate Action Now, and we work locally, we work statewide, we work regionally. And so I would really like to invite everybody here at least to connect with each other so that we know what each other is doing. And the other thing that came up in our group, to piggyback on what Susan was saying, because Susan is an educator of educators, and to piggyback on what the person just before was saying, was about viscerally, sensually, practically involving people, like with, families gardening and teaching them through different programs, whether it's urban community gardens or the trustee gardening program or Mothers Out Front, or whatever it is. Like, that was another thing that was coming up. And another thing that came up was the conflict between towns and the state, sort of the how legislation sometimes is at odds with what towns are trying to do, and how that shouldn't stop towns, that towns should get together and, just keep telling the State House what we need, because it's not going to change if enough of us are not, are not saying that. And even within the climate movement, there's all of this tension between renewable, especially the state level, between working towards renewable energies and working towards ecosystem health. You wouldn't think those were at odds with each other, but they are. And so we really need people to learn about that and to speak to that, and to involve their local legislators, their local reps. And I love what Charlie, is doing with inviting speakers and inviting reps to those talks, like just as much dialogue as could possibly happen inside the State House, inside Town Hall, inside our living rooms, online, just as much as we can. And so I think that's something we can do with this group, even right here, to invite each other to each other's events, or at least to let our audiences know about each other's work.
I think, Elise, you're actually raising your electronic hand.
Yes. Only because I want to be able to reflect some of what's been coming in on the chat from folks. So for one thing, there are resources that are being shared, and I will make a note that in the WOVA thing for this session, we have some of the Mothers Out Front resources that are shared there. And Lenore's sharing some, and Ginger's sharing some. We also have Wendy reinforced what I think Lenore was saying, that using art and gathering out on the land, that experiential, connecting people through experience, and finding new groups of people to sit down and talk with, to see what comes up there. So there may be some group that hasn't even been on your radar. And then creating explicit, to Susan's point, opportunities for networking and collaborating and replicating action and activism. We've heard about a couple of, even just in our group, it's like, oh, did you know that Belmont and Lexington and Acton are doing this? You can do it too. So really learning from each other. And Miriam is posting some resources. So.
We're going to make the chat available to everybody on the WOVA website. I think I may have intimidated people by anyone from the room that you have to talk in the microphone. Did anyone here want to say any perspective or question, something that's been standing out for them so far? Nope, everybody's quiet. Anything else stand out for people? I stood out for me is how hard this is.
I know we're mostly focused on soil and land use, but Mass Power Forward is a statewide collaborative. They're really looking at legislative work, particularly around, and I just don't know if people even know about it. I just learned about it 6 months ago. Really looking at energy, housing, particularly some of the groups are.
Can you hear that? Mass Power Forward? Yeah, they hear you.
Anyway, worth just looking into, because whatever group you're in, There's already about 16 and it meets regularly, and that may not be the group for soil health drawdown, but perhaps we're trying to bring all of these together. So it has, is it Charles? You know, the sustainability, town sustainability committees could all be linked for the people who are interested in the housing challenges and gas to Mass Power Forward, and also potentially linked or be aware of what else people are doing and creating clusters around soil health.
Okay. I want to comment on our larger group. We decided, even though it's more than 4 people, to be this bigger group. We started it with that question, a Lily Tomlin question, and it really took a lot of time. And then we decided not to stick with the Lily Tomlin question, but that seemed like it would be a really empowering thing. I felt very excited hearing people's stories and hearing about their passion, because it's really hard to keep going. And you do need to plug into some experience or something. It was really, I found that very compelling. It made me really happy that there were a lot of people in the world who had these experiences. I was just very proud to be a human being. I just wanted to say that. And just the question that was raised about how do you market to the masses to get them more involved in organic products, or to know a little bit about soil, people who don't even think about that. It's something I think we all have to think about if we're going to be hearing this message. And the final thought that came from our group is, you know, the drawdown message that we just have to find to give people hope that even though we don't have a whole lot of time on this one, that this is a solution that really works. I think that really stood out in the group as well. Any other comments before we do a final wrap up? Lisa, go ahead.
Well, just to reinforce what you just said about hope, that in our group, we talked, and it came out of people's stories initially, sort of using heart-centered approaches that addressed hope and that helped people move beyond despair. And that I think people talked about the, you know, experiential, sensual, art, family, engagement, building community, all tend to sort of resonate from that heart center.
I want to turn it over to the speakers. Did anything stand out for you listening to today or thinking about this issue that you want to comment on about sending the message forward? Any aha moments or kind of aha moments, takeaways for you?
I think for me, it was just the reminder that, yes, I would love to build a curriculum and have all the right signs and have everything right on the website. And there's so much work to be done that needs to happen at the trustees to get this word out. But it's also just those moments of being out in the U-Pick and picking a tomato and seeing a butterfly, like that's all part of it too. And it's hard to quantify that. So, but that all matters, but it is, those moments are so important.
Carly, Lisa, any thoughts about something you might move forward with?
I think I've already spoken quite a bit, but just reinforcing the message about taking time to slow down and recognize that we can't do everything at once. But maybe in our slowing down, we do connect with people, or we do connect with the butterfly, or we do connect with the messaging that will work to reach the new people. So giving ourselves just a little compassion along the way.
Carly, any takeaways from you? Or things that stood out for you? Maybe not. Okay. Charlie, you have to unmute if you want to say anything. You're muted. You're gonna have to do sign language.
The mic might be in the wrong direction.
Oh, we
Yeah,
are-
I finally got to the right button there. Well, I just want to say I'm inspired by meeting with you guys who are all doing such great things. And I actually think that's one of the messages is just getting together with other people who share your concern is a great way to energize yourself as well as other people. So thanks for putting this on.
You have some final messages. Someone puts their hand up. Lisa, is that hand still up or you have something else to say? Okay. I want to thank everybody for coming. There is at the end of the woven materials, a summary there should be a tape of this, but there are also all the resources that people have indicated should be there. So you do have a chance if you want to post something, you can type it in yourself. Or you can see anything that has been posted with them or with us there. And there's also, you saw on bulletin boards, they have these little codes that if you want to do an assessment of today's program or any other parts of the day that the conference organizers are interested in getting feedback on the day, I guess, for their planning purposes for the future. I guess I want to remind people that there are several important meetings taking place tomorrow. I don't know if you can see me here, but there's some more stuff on equity. And there is some very important session on the farm bill, which we want to make sure people, if you have the time, can think about doing that. Because I think we're all interested in expanding the conversation to include equity issues. And we all know the farm bill is coming up and maybe we can act together on that one. So thank you for coming. We're going to actually leave 5 minutes early, which is a miracle on a Saturday. We've been here for a long time, so I think people will be grateful for that. And again, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.